Hey, folks, welcome to the pre-show. Just making sure everything's rolling. Let's get our banner going. Boom, there's our scrolling banner. Let's get our overlay. Boom, there it is. Just the camera. Just the position. I'm tired. A tired day. But I suppose I start a lot of shows saying the same thing, don't I? So, folks, if you're new here, you are in the pre-show. And the pre-show is what we do for the first 4 minutes and 25 seconds before we go to the airwaves. I got a couple of windows open, programs. There we go. There is our connection to the radio studio. Sure I got everything going all right here. Testing 1 2, testing 3 4. There we go. There's our feedback. So I got to bring that down. Boom. There. You get to watch all of that. So how is everybody this evening? Gathering over there. Niall Parkinson, good to see you. Steve Clark, good to see you as well. And Leslie, good to see you. Who else we got in here? Let's see. Roddy Piper's glasses. So, who else we got coming in so far? Daniel Ondra, good to see you. John Bottom, I've seen you before. Not sure if I know who you are. Playing Fortnite with your boy. Oh, I know who you are. You're one of my son's friends. Well, welcome. This is the pre-show. Welcome. We'll be going live at 4 minutes and 25 seconds after the hour, a little less than 2 minutes from now. So glad to have you. It's nice to have 10 and 11-year-olds in the show. So everything placed right. This is a directional mic, so it's going to be right in front of my face. Doesn't look like it on the screen, but it is. So there's Flynn. How you doing, Flynn? Come and say hi. Oh, it's Waylon. Hey, Waylon. There's Flynn, my boy Flynn. They're playing games. Tinglebottom. Oh, Mr. Tinglebottom. I know who you are. Oh, it's Tigglebottom. Tigglebottom. So, well, that's good. So he's tuning in for higher education. Hey, Flynn, says Leslie Holker. So Matt Finn is here. Good to see you, Matt. We got a minute left here, Ro, before we go live. Less than a minute. So come and say hi if you're going to say hi. Yeah, I did. On the way down here. I got coffee tonight because I need it. Hey, Matthew Sainsbury. Because I overfilled my cup. I broke my good cup today. I broke my Intrepid radio cup. So we just have to print up a new one. All right, 9:04:01. I'm going to go dark here in a couple of seconds. And those of you who are new, we go dark. We start the show. So hang on to your butts. We'll be right back.
Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Well, happy Thursday evening, folks. Welcome to the program. I'm your host, Scotty Roberts, of this, my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on Odyssey Radio, ODYSY radio.com. And I'm drinking coffee. That's how tired my brain is tonight. I don't know what's with that. It was one of those days. Just a slow brain going and slow everything today. And so welcome to the program. You can see this show in its video simulcast if you're just listening over on the radio station, over on YouTube at youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And while you're in here, and all those of you who are here gathering now, give me a thumbs up because that helps propagate the show. It helps the algorithms, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. So if you would do that, I'd appreciate it. At the same time, if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to join, go ahead and join the channel. That would be fantastic. I'm going to give you a little ad like I did last night, and this is playing on the radio. It's a self-ad. I'm saying I'm sending my son, Flynn, to the Renaissance Festival on Saturday. And he's going with his brother, Sam. Sam's taking him. They're going all in costume, all decked out. Now, with the heavy expense of moving and all of that, we don't have a lot of cash to give Flynn. I think I had $16 the other day. And I said, Flynn, we'll have to see what we can do. So I'm running a little special. If you would like to get a tarot reading, as you know, I do them tarot, go over to my website. And while you're at the website, you click on the tarot button up in the top link. Now here, I'll even get you a link here. And if you click on once you click on the tarot link, you're going to see two prices: a 5-card reading for $45, 10-card reading for $85. You click on the 5-card reading for $45, and tonight only I will give you the 10-card reading for that price. So go ahead and go over there, go to this link. Sorry for this bold, brazen, piggish self-promotion, but this is for my son, Flynn. We're just going to try to raise a few bucks he can take with him. So he's got something to take with him over to the festival. But you know, it's an expensive place to go if you're not working out there. And it's even expensive if you work out there. So if you are of the mind and you would like to get a tarot reading, just go ahead and click on that link. Go over and I'll do your reading. We'll schedule it anytime you want. And you just go over, you pay for the $45 reading, comes to my PayPal. I can give that to Flynn, and then we'll schedule for you. That's the way we normally do anyway. It's just Flynn is the new factor in there. So I sure appreciate Leslie. Thank you. I appreciate that. Flynn will thank you. I will make sure he will thank you. Thank you for that. But doing readings, it's what I do. I've been doing readings for 40 years. Well, technically for about 38 years. I started in the mid 1980s was when I did my first reading, and I've been doing them ever since. So, Grumpy Stack, can I borrow $43? Sure, call Flynn. So, maybe Flynn's got it. It's okay. No obligation to anybody. It's okay, Grumpy Stack. I'm just asking if you want a reading, now's a good time to buy one, because I'm going to use that money to help Flynn. To have a good time at the Renaissance Festival, you can't go with $20. That'll get you a pop or two. And maybe that's all he needs. I don't know. I just want him to be able to go out and enjoy himself with his brother Sam. So there you go. It's all right, Grumpy. You call me anyway. We'll work something out. So if you need one. So tonight, there's a verse in Matthew. It's Matthew 24:37 that says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the time of the coming of the Son of Man. Let me read the direct quote for you here. The day and the hour is unknown. This is all in a teaching of Jesus. He's talking about the context of the destruction of the temple and the signs of the end times. Now, if you want to be hypercritical, we don't know that Jesus said these things. Maybe these were added by his followers later. I like Dr. Michael S. Heiser, who I've quoted in my books. He's an ancient linguist and a biblical scholar. And he said, God may not have, what's the word I'm looking for? Not endured, saved, preserved the integrity of the written word. He says, remember, it was inspired by God, but it was written by men. And you have to think of the context in which it was written, and all of those things that we've talked about many times on this show. So if these are indeed the sayings of Jesus, they probably are. But there are also things that we have to be prepared to find out that maybe these were things added by his followers to solidify his messianic case, and so on. Let's leave that aside for another time. I don't want to offend any sensibilities with that. But he's talking about the signs of the end times. And it said he left the temple and he was walking away when his disciples came to him, calling his attention to its building. Do you see all these things Jesus said? He's looking at the temple. I'm going to tell you this. Not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down. Now, was he predicting the end times with that? Was he predicting the Roman destruction, which would take place in another about 40 years, where they leveled the temple? He says, what? And then Jesus goes on. They said, his disciples, when will this happen? What's going to be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So now they're getting into eschatology. And Jesus answered, watch that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah. And they'll deceive a lot of people. And he goes on and he gives his whole address here. But then all the way down in verse 36, it's talking about the day and the hour that's unknown of his coming. He says, but about that day or the hour, no one knows. Not even the angels in heaven know. Nor the Son, meaning himself, S-O-N. But only the Father knows. And he says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and given in marriage, up to the day of Noah, that Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. This is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with a handmill, one will be taken and the other left. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. So you must also be ready, because the Son of Man will come in an hour when you don't expect him. That's almost sounding like when he uses the analogy of a thief coming, like you need to stay up and make sure that you know when he's coming, or something bad's going to happen. And then he goes on and talking about the faithful and wise servant at this time. Now, this verse This 24:37, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the time of the coming of the Son of Man. What happened in the time of Noah? And we've talked about this before. We hinted at this before. But at the day of Noah, you had me at 2 women will be grinding. Thanks, Scott Allen. Yeah, there's entendre everywhere, isn't there? Shocked. And so you've got this passage that talks about as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the time of the coming of the Son of Man. Now, the interesting thing is what was going on at the time of Noah? At the time of Noah, you had the watchers coming down. Well, this was before the time of Noah, but this is what built up to the time of Noah. You had the watchers descend to the earth, and the Bene Ha-Elohim, and impregnated the women of the earth, well, at least of a certain civilization. And they had offspring, and the Nephilim. And so what did you have going on? Niall Parkins says, it's always amazing to me that when these verses are taken in a separate context, i.e. the alien presence, they tend to make sense. And so you look at that, and many years ago, about 30 years ago, I was talking about this with some friends, probably not an original idea, but an original idea for me at the time, meaning somebody else, I'm sure, thought of this long before I did. But I said, what was going on in the days of Noah? Well, you had celestial beings descending to the earth. You had Enoch, who was taken by God, abducted by God. You had the offspring, the Nephilim, of the mixing of celestial beings, or, if you will, extraterrestrial beings, meaning not of this earth, the Bene Ha-Elohim. Well, you had all of that going on at the time of the time of Noah. And what does it say in the scripture there? If you read it right and you look at the linguistics, it says that Noah was chosen because he was one of the few whose bloodline was pure. And you'll remember this because I told you once I had critics out there telling me when I said that I was being racist. God, there's no pure human bloodline. I said, we are talking about celestial beings mixing with human beings. We're not talking about races on the earth. And so when that happened, what did you have happen? You had impregnations. You had children being born, offspring, hybrid offspring. So here's the interesting thing. I said at the time, about 30 years ago, I said, that sounds an awful lot like what we're hearing in our modern alien mythos today. Abduction scenarios where you've got aliens coming down. They're taking people. They're returning them. You're hearing of all these impregnation stories and abduction stories. And so you have to ask, what's going on here? Is this an application of what Matthew 24:37 says, that in the day, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the time of the coming of the Son of Man? What does that all mean on that eschatological calendar? And so is it something we think we know, or is it something we may not really understand at all? So what you had going on back then, been going on now. Leslie Hoker says, only racists see racism where there is no racism. That's the truth. I won't even get to politics. I was going to say something, but it will lapse me into politics, and I ain't going to do it. So with the theme of tonight, we're talking about abductions. We're talking about alien abductions and the real deal here. But I'm going to look at this from a little different perspective than we have talked about it before, or that somebody else out there might talk about it. We're going to talk about alien abductions from maybe more of a psychological point of view. The scientific and psychological community tends to want to talk around the possibility of there being actual alien abductions. and say maybe these are people who have some kind of pathology, some kind of need, some kind of this, some kind of that, and they see things or they hear things. There's the sleep paralysis and all of these different things. So there's all kinds of things out there. But is there a way to look at this stuff psychologically and say, maybe there's more to this? What's the real deal? What leads people to believe that they've been abducted by aliens? Now, before we get into it, that's a good segue. I got Ruben Fasthorse called in. He's sitting in the wings out here. Let me bring him in. Hey, Ruben.
Chair.
How you
Big
doing,
brother? I love
So-
the conversation and what you're saying and what you're posing
Yes.
in many ways. And from a Native American perspective, I got something to say, but I'm not going to say
Please
it
do.
now.
Well, you can.
Little bro-
Is it pertinent to
Okay.
what to the topic, or are you drifting off on a rabbit trail like I do?
Well, in Native American spirituality and ideology, there is two creation stories that we have. One is we come from the stars, and one
Right.
is always we come from the earth. We come out of caves in the Black Hills. But the stars is really interesting because the first we're like Greeks. We're polytheistic. We have many deities, many gods, like the Greeks. And so saying that to say this, that the gods were many, gods and goddesses. Always got to remember the goddesses.
Sure.
And so the stars is where we came from. And there's a creation story among Lakota people in the Dakotas that two girls fell in love with a star nation. One was a bright star. One was a sort of dim star. And the pretty girl fell in love with the bright star. And he took her. And then the dim star took the plain girl. She wasn't super stardom, but they went up and they instructed both of them, the girls, to not dig in the ground in the Star Nation. But they're Lakota people, so that they did, because they're looking for turnips, what we have every June, as Lakota people do. And they dug a hole and they found the earth. And one of them felt really sad about being home. So she said, I'm going to go down and do it. So she went down, and the other one, younger sister, went down, and they fell to the earth and died. But out of them, they produced the Lakota Nation, the Native American nation, through their falling.
Was
Their
there
sacrifice.
something that was part of that story that I read this a while back, where there was a hole in the sky and the people that dwelt there, they would descend down. They would extend a rope and they could extend down to the earth. And somebody got stuck in the hole. There was a woman who got stuck and could not come through, and everybody was stranded here. And that's the North Star, is what they said.
That is very poignant. You say that, Chia, older brother, because there are so many creation beginnings, not just Lakota, but Irish, Scottish, Scandinavian, Japanese, Chinese. They all talk about coming from the Star Nation and then coming from underneath the earth. We all became something at some point in some time. And there's an archetype that we have, according to Joseph Campbell, in the myth stories. He said Joseph Campbell was not a preacher or vicar or priest or anything. He was just a professor from the University of Massachusetts. And he said that he said that there is an archetype in all of us. Somewhat, we came from either the Black nation or we came from the Chinese nation, but we expanded out and we went our different ways. But we always have a creation story. We always have a flood story.
Right.
And so that pinpoints us to being human. I'm Native American, you're Scottish. It doesn't matter. We're all related. And that's the word I want to say is mitakuye oyasi in my language. Mitakuye oyasi means we're all related. We're all
Do you
related.
have, in Lakota tradition mythology, do you have stories of abductions from celestial or extraterrestrial types of beings?
Yes, we do. And that's what I was, thank you for bringing me back to that, is that it's the Star Nation. We came from the Star Nation as human beings, all of us, you, me, everybody listening. But I'll give you two stories that relate to that,
Okay.
that are not Christian. And
Okay.
they are resurrection stories, just like the Immaculate Conception. This is two other resurrections. We all know I'm Catholic. I grew up Catholic. I was going to be a priest, that close. But other than
You're one of them reservation Catholics.
Indeed. So
Yes.
two stories I'm going to tell you are resurrection stories of how humanity is all connected. Mitakuye oyasi, we're all connected. We're all related to the formation, the two-legged, the winged, the crawling, the slithering, the swimming, the snake, all that. And this is from my part of the country now. I live in New York. So the Mohawk people have this story about how corn, we all love corn. We feed it to our stock. We eat it ourselves, corn. And there was a chief that had sons, 4 sons, but the little son couldn't fight in battle. So he said, go out and find something for us to eat. And so he went out and he came across a very holy man that had a headdress and Mohawk. This is Mohawk now. It's not Lakota. And he instructed him, I will teach you how to wrestle, Indian wrestle. And we all know Indian wrestling. I was a wrestler too. So he wrestled with him. And then every day for a couple of weeks, he would teach him how to wrestle. And then on the last day, he said, now you must kill me. You must cut off my head and put my head in the ground and my body close. And so the young man did. And out of the ground came the first stalk of corn. And so that was the beginning of corn, where it came from. Now, here's a second resurrection story coming from human to plant and feeding the world is very Jesus-like, Jesus Christ-like.
Yeah.
The second story is Hawaiian. Hawaiian in the sense of that a woman would bathe in the water nude every day, and she would bathe, and then there'd be this snake that would come in, big snake, and slather her body, wrap himself around her and whatnot. And then for a week, and then on the last day, he said, you must kill me and cut my head off. And then he said, put my head in the sand, and bury me. So she did on the last day. they're weak. And out of that head grew the first palm tree, and it produced coconuts. And you look at a coconut, and when it falls, it has two eyes and a mouth, like you and me. And so that's another resurrection story.
That's
It's not
interesting.
very Christian-like, but it's two resurrection
A lot
from.
of these old mythological tales like that have a lot of similarities. What about abductions? Anything with alien abduction is what the theme is tonight. So, in your culture, your heritage, are there any stories that are like that of extraterrestrial beings of some kind, celestial beings, gods, goddesses, taking people away, impregnating them, setting them back to the earth? Anything like that?
Nothing really impregnating, but coming to us and talking to us. You find Devil's Tower, which is in Wyoming. We today we know it as Devil's Tower, but it's Greyhorn Butte. We call it Pdejota Baja, Greyhorn Butte. That's our native language. But the white people say, oh, it's Devil's Tower. Because anytime
there
they
you
come
go.
across us, they called it Devil's Spirit, Devil Lake, whatever. It was anti-Christian. But we always had this connection. And I think the people that can speak the most about this are those from Chile and South America, because in Wyoming, there is a medicine wheel all made of stone, where I believe, personally, I believe that there was contact there that the native people acknowledged. And when you go down to South America and Chile and Brazil, you're going to find these stone images of the what you're talking about, the people that came from another world.
Sure.
But Native American people believe that we actually are a star people. You,
Okay.
me, and we're just manifestations of an earthly form of what they represented. We're products of our
course,
environment. So we had to adapt. I have very Asian eyes from Mongolia, because I have a Mongolian spot when I was born, and many people around the world. But our same archetype is that we came from these star people that came here and found peace or sanctuary or whatever it may be. And so, voila, which is French.
There it is.
Voila.
Well, and even in Jewish, Judeo-Christian mythology, Old Testament mythology, and I use mythology not to say it's false. I use mythology as a descriptor of stories and collected accounts and so on. They talk about how God had created the first man and the first woman, and how that one of the Elohim came down and impregnated Eve. And Adam also impregnated Eve. She bore twin sons, Cain and Abel. And of course, the Elohim was referred to as the serpent in the garden, or better in the Hebrew, the Nakash, the bright shining one, the bringer of wisdom. What were some of the other shining prince of heaven? And the reason it got connected to the serpent, that name Nakash, was Moses crafted a bronze serpent thousands of years later to heal the people of their snake bites, and he called it the Nakashta, or which he put up on the pole. It was a bronze serpent. And so it's interesting how these mythologies can cross over and have some of the. It's like Micah Hanks and I used to say when we were talking about writing a book together about these mythologies and religion, science versus religion, and how all of these things have similar sounding prototypes to them. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's no good then. Thank you. There's my my heart attack pills in case I have one out there. I left them in my pants in the washer and dryer, so those are gone.
And it just to spin off that springboard off that chair, Scotty, older brother, Joseph Campbell, mythology teacher out of the University of Massachusetts, at one time, God rest his soul, said, mythology is our stories and legends that bring our consciousness to a level that is spiritual. And so legends, Japanese, African, Scottish, Native American, they all come together. We are like Neil is saying, we're all monotheistic, many religions, many deities, many gods. And it's only through Christianity, not knocking Christianity, a group Catholic, we're not monotheistic, we're polytheistic. We're many-godded, many deities, many demons. And demons is not a bad word. It's spirit.
Frankly, what is one of the names of God in the Old Testament? Elohim. And Elohim has that plural suffix on the end, him in the Hebrew. Elohim, literally meaning the name of God, used over 2,700 times in the Old Testament. Elohim, it means God of or among many gods. It's got the plurality on there. Your purists will say, well, no, that simply means the God, the singular God of multiple majesty and power. And I said, it doesn't really say that, does it? And you have God himself in the Old Testament, in the book of Psalms, saying, and Elohim stood in the midst of the Elohim, and he, singular, said to them, plural, you are all gods, the bright shining princes of heaven. Then it goes on into the context of the passage. So I think the Old Testament, more than we think it does, teaches a polytheism. And almost like the Olympians, there's many gods and one chief god. And that Elohim or El Elyon, El Shaddai, Jehovah, these were all the gods that were. But then again, Elohim and Jehovah appear to be two different beings in the Old Testament, if you look at it linguistically. So
Johann Johnson said we're all composed from the same star elements. And that I believe that. I truly, truly thank you, Johann, in saying that. And Scotty's right in what he's saying, in that looking at the artifacts of all cultures, that circle.
And I'm certainly no expert or master at all of this
stuff.
No,
you're not a priest.
I know enough to get in trouble and talk about it.
Or rabbi.
Yeah.
But in this sense, you are.
Well, onspia wagatea. There you go. That comes to mind.
And then I'm a medicine man.
And there you go. I'm a medicine man. Yeah, have you seen those memes?
But in the same sense, we all are. Neil, Dave Potter, you, me. We're all. I love that Hindu saying, because I've studied other cultures, and saying that to say this, that when the Hindu monks and the Buddhist monks say namaste.
Yes.
The God in me recognizes the God in you. Right. And that's true, because we are our own gods, goddesses, and we choose our life, and we choose to be our own leaders. That's what I believe it to be, because we're not, goddess, we're not folding ourselves to follow a shepherd, a vicar, a priest, a rabbi, or something. We choose to follow our own path into the beyond. And I'll tell you, Lakota legend,
Before you do, I'm just going to tell you, Rocky and I used to end our shows saying "Namaste, bitches." So, there you go.
So at the end of the Ghost Road, when we all die in Lakota legend, Native American Lakota legend, we die, we go to the Ghost Road, which is the Milky Way. And if you've ever seen the Milky Way from the Badlands or from no city atmosphere, lights, whatnot, technology in the woods, when you see the Ghost Road and it goes south. It goes south. And this is called, Lakotas believe, how did they didn't have telescopes. They didn't have telescopes, but they could see a division, a fork in the road of the Ghost Road south. It's called naked eye astronomy by a book is written by a Lakota man called Ivan Star Comes Out. Appropriate name. Ivan Star Comes Out. And he wrote this book that is where you go down the Ghost Road, and towards the south of the Ghost Road, which it goes, is at the fork. An old woman sits at the center of that fork, and she says, "Scotty, did you live a good life?" And
yes, I did. I would say
she'll check your head, your temple for a tattoo, or your hand.
Was there any gray area there? No, I'm asking this seriously. In the legend, serious, because you could say, "I believe I lived as good a life as I could, though I made mistakes."
That's a good question.
Answer?
That's a good question, because she will know whether you're lying or not. She'll know whether you're lying or not. She'll check your forehead for a tattoo or your hand for a tattoo. And I don't know what the tattoo is, but she'll say, if she knows you're lying, Scotty.
Right.
She won't say it, but
don't say that with such conviction.
She'll say, go to the right road. The right road, which is the short road.
Yes.
Short road. And you'll fall off and then come back to earth and be reborn again. Reincarnation.
That's interesting.
But if you don't lie and you say, like you just said, I did my best, I tried hard, and then she said, go to your left, and then you go down the long road, then you go beyond the nirvana, heaven, happy hunting grounds, whatever it may be. And nobody knows. Even the Lakotas don't know. Indians don't know.
Brings up something interesting, maybe totally unrelated. The short road and the long road. Back when I was in my early 20s, I had a palmist read my palm, and she was looking at my lifeline down here. And she said, "Your lifeline is very short." And I said, "Oh, that doesn't sound good." She says, "No, but it splinters here at the bottom and then continues on." And she said, which could indicate a very long life with something that is so near death, or something where you die along the way and you're saved again, or something like that. She used it as that. So you have a long life that splinters into a new life. So she said it probably could be illness, healing from an illness or something like that. Now, that was told me when I was 21, 22 years old. And it's not a going thing where I go, "Hey, I got a long life," because I could go out and get hit by a bus tomorrow. But I look at that and I say, yeah, maybe, I wonder if that's it. When you talked about the short life on the Milky Way, the short, and then you drop down and you are reborn. Is that, I'm not asking this question. I just go, that just makes me think of that short splintered lifeline I have. So, well, tonight I've got about about 10 minutes left of the show for the radio audience, and we go to the captain's cabin. So I was going to talk about, and this was very interesting. This is a great big rabbit trail we just went on with you coming on, but talking about alien abductions and what leads people to believe it. And I was going to look at that from the psychological point of view and talk about, there's a guy, Mack is his last name. He's a physician, and he talks about, he kind of breaks it down about all the different kinds of encounters that people talk about. Bringing it into the laboratory, testing people. Harvard gets involved with all these ideological clashes over the interpretation of anomalous experiences, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Mack and James are the two scientists that I quote here, and they studied all kinds of psychology after training in medicine. And they tried to bridge this gap between psychology and spirituality. And but then Harvard, of course, got on their asses and said, no, you can't do that. So they wanted to try to develop this very rigorous standard of evidence for divine experiences that people have. And and this story goes on. We can maybe jump into this again tomorrow night, and we'll talk more about this because we've only got a few minutes left on of radio time. But the abduction narrative is a really strange hybrid. Think about this, Ruben. Now, in your own culture, you've got stories of extraterrestrials, of creation, of so on. You don't have abduction stories per se, but they're all across the world. And so these abduction narratives, it's a really strange hybrid in its own right. It's humiliating surgical invasion. It's tempered by cosmic awareness. Experiencers, as they're called now, those who've experienced abduction, they're experiencers. And they travel through windows, they travel through walls, tunnels, space-time, to reach starships that are examining tables held within. They take young women's eggs and they're extracted. Male sperm is extracted, siphoned off. And so despite waking bruised and violated, a lot of these abductees, these experiencers, they say that their love for beings in the alien realm can surpass any human bond and generate a sense of oceanic oneness, so to speak, with the universe. And it rivals the experiences of a world-class mediator. Faust had said, we're not alone in the universe. And there are beings out there who care about us. But getting to this point is a really long, arduous journey. And a lot of people want to deny your experience. So even on a psychological level, there are psychologists out there that are saying, no, this abduction experience is a real thing. Because of the personality-driven explanations for why people with no overt psychopathology report alien encounters all the time. And they've proliferated with blockbuster movies about aliens. And there's a psychologist out there. His name is Baumeister. And he's with Case Western Reserve University. He argues that abduction reports are made by masochists who unconsciously want to relinquish control of their lives. And the loss of control is manifest in these humiliating encounters they share of how I was anally probed, or my sperm was taken and I had implants put in my body and made to have sex with a woman, and so on and so forth, up on their ship. And to be sure, there's a surfeit of elaborate sex and abduction reports. But one study found that among 50% of men reported being examined naked on a table by humanoid beings. And in fact, many abductees blame aliens for sexual dysfunction, emotional disturbances. they're finding now that a lot of what you see in sexual cases, and by the way, Ruben, I'm keeping you here because I'm going to pull you over into the captain's cabin when we're done on radio, and we'll talk some more about this. But psychologists have long surmised that abductees might be inclined to fantasy, to absorption, the propensity to daydream and be enthralled by novels. They're the people that I see them out there a lot. And Adler talked about this kind of person. He was a contemporary of Freud. He said there are people who have nothing, or they feel nothing, or they don't know where they're going, and they create. They're drawn to fiction. They're drawn to fantasy. They're drawn to these things, and then they create it in their own psyche. And he said they're reaching out for something to pull themselves forward to, so they can have something to live for. That's why I see some of these people who are big believers in aliens, and they'll say, "Oh, please, I'm waiting on my roof. Come and take me." And it's because they take me somewhere. Well, what if they're there to eat you? You know, there's that too. But all lightness aside, that there's a lot of people that have a propensity to daydreams, to fiction, to TV shows, to movies. And both alien abductees and garden variety fantasizers report false pregnancies, out-of-body experiences, apparition sightings. And some psychologists speculate. Yeah.
That reminds me of a story that my father told me, because he turned me on to Star Trek, the first Star Trek, black and white. He also turned me on to Twilight Zone.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an episode called "To Serve Man." In the end, it was like, it's a recipe book. It's a recipe book to serve man.
It's to serve man. They eat you. It's a recipe book. I remember that one. And the guy's trying to get off the ship, and the door closes, and he's trapped inside. And so they're not here to say, they're here to serve man. They were being honest. We're here to serve man to our families. So blanched or boiled or braised or whatever, grilled. We like a grill.
Seared, yeah, like a sea bass or something. But,
yes.
Go ahead.
Going on with this thing, that everybody has these apparition experiences. All these people who seem to have a propensity for this. But whatever the case, it was found that there was a willing listener in this guy named John Mack. And Mack has been on the faculty of Harvard Medical School since 1955. And in 1982, he founded the Center for Psychology and Social Change. Now, I think this is the late John Mack. I might be wrong on this, but this is some old information that I had pulled up. But there was a center that he started to study anomalous experiences that people had. And we got about 2.5 minutes left here before we have to get out of here for the radio audience. But he founded the Department of Psychiatry at the Cambridge Hospital in 1969, when I was a mere child of 9 years old. And that program has long attracted innovative Eastern-oriented psychiatrists. And so it goes on. Mack embraced traditions from Freudian psychoanalysis, the guided meditation of Werner Erhard, and in 1988 began to practice Stanislav Grof's holotropic breathwork, and so on. And he goes on and on. So he's studying all of this, what we might put in the category of being the woo stuff, the weird stuff, the weird woo experiential stuff, into a psychiatric category to see what it's all about. He used hypnotic regression to retrieve detailed memories of encounters with aliens, and all chronicled in his book, Abduction. He's now interviewed more than 200 abductees, and he says that he ultimately endorsed abduction reports largely because he found his subjects to be, get this, mentally competent. Some were also highly traumatized. Most were reluctant to come forward and appropriately skeptical in their experiences. At the same time, Mack defends the use of these controversial techniques like hypnotic regression because He prizes the experiential narrative over the empirical data. How about that for a psychiatrist? He values, sees big value in experience over data. And so there's a lot more information on him and what he accomplished. Maybe we'll cover some of this tomorrow night for those of you on the radio. You can also join us in the captain's cabin very shortly, but we got to get out of here for you guys.
I'm just going to say this, Scotty, real quick.
You got about 10 seconds.
Okay, we jump in. I've been under hypnosis, a hypnotist. I was studying to become a hypnotist as a magician and mentalist, and then graduating to a hypnotist and saying that to say this. He was wanting to teach me.
Save it for the after show, Ruben. We got to get out of here. We got to cut off with the radio. Good night. Live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
Well, welcome to the captain's cabin, y'all. Yar. Here we are. We got Niall Parkinson coming in right away. Fantastic. There's Niall. I'm also going to bring Ruben back in, but he's not back yet. He took a commercial break, I believe. So, how you doing, Niall?
Great, Scotty. Fascinating subject.
Outstanding. It's a great topic. We didn't get into half of the material I wanted to, but that's okay. We had Ruben.
No, we'll do it now.
I thought it was very good.
We'll do it now. And the aspect of abduction is kind of central.
Yes.
Before you came on air, I was speaking to a couple of people in the chat room about how Hollywood has always presented us with these various aspects of abduction in various ways,
Flatu Barada Nikto.
Yes, yeah. So there's a couple of different aspects to it. but the main thing I would like to talk about is the kind of religious aspect and a spiritual aspect, which tends to always, if you read about anthropology and cultural spirituality, it always comes back to the same thing.
Yes.
About being taken up, being adjusted, being pure and purified, or exemplified in some way. It also is very easily taken over to the shamanistic idea of initiation and being torn apart and put back together again, and again transformed into a spiritual being who will sort of elevate those around them into some kind of higher consciousness. And abduction feeds directly into that. You mentioned John Mack earlier on, but there's also like Bud Hopkins. He was into the hypnosis thing, and
Yes. Whitley Strieber.
so
Yeah.
Strieber, yeah, I'm not sure about that guy.
He's more
he always strikes me as a bit flaky, but that's
he's more an author. He's not the psychiatric type.
But there is one author who I take very seriously when it comes to all of this, is a gentleman, an American. He's from Philadelphia. Hi, Ruben. Good to see you.
Hi.
A guy called David Jacobs. And he's elderly now, he's well in his 80s, but he wrote a number of books on abduction under the tutelage of Bud Hopkins, where he would abductees who were like completely and utterly devastated by what was happening to them. They would wake up in like a fugue state and they wouldn't know where they were.
They would have the trauma, the PTSD.
Yes, and they couldn't explain it, and of course, there's a big stigma attached to all of this, But eventually, they would end up going to a general practitioner who would say, "Well, this sounds a bit strange. Maybe you need to speak to a psychiatrist or whatever." But eventually, they would end up. Only a small number of Americans would end up in the rooms of David Jacobs, who was a master hypnotist, and he didn't charge anything for his work, and all of the hypnosis sessions, like a broad spectrum of people, you can imagine, like going to somebody like that, the stigma that would be attached to it. But across all of these stories, they all had the same basic setup. They were taken to extrapolate a certain genetic material from their bodies. Independent people, no correlation. This guy was very professional. In fact, he himself, Bud Hopkins, came up with a questionnaire that they would insist that these people fill out in detail, and then they would study them before they took any. They didn't call them patients, clients.
I will say to Amanda, I don't think it's just Americans. I think there are a lot of people. There are people in tribal cultures in what you would call third world countries that experience a lot of these same things.
Absolutely.
We just don't hear about it as much.
You just don't hear about it
because they don't
because
have mass communication.
And it's not written about. So
sorry to interrupt, Neil, and Scotty, and Amanda, but the best proof that I can find is among my own culture, but also more so in Chile, in the Peruvian cultures. You have these huge architectures of stone manufactured
Puma Punka
On the ground.
and places
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Where they see space helmets and all this kind of stuff that's ancient beyond our
And that's
time.
the interpretation we give it, but it sure looks like that. And the way stones are cut and pieced together and so on and so on. But you find that all around the world. I just late one night, I was sitting up and a documentary came on, popped on, and was talking about these ancient cultures around the world that all have these cut stones that are pieced together like with paper thin joints, and they do curving things and interlocking and all of this. And you find that in Middle Eastern cultures. You find that in Central American and South American cultures. All ancient stuff. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yes, you do.
You know,
And
just capitalize on that. Sorry, Neil. Just capitalize on
far
that.
away.
If you look at every culture that has pyramids, Egyptian, all the way to Azteca, even in North
Chinese,
America, we have outside.
American.
I was at Chucalissa outside of Memphis, Tennessee, where they had a pyramid that the Choctaw Indian tribe looks after.
Well, there is one.
I've been into Malaysia, South Malaysia, and they have, all the monkeys occupy it now, but it's all as pyramids. And so to me, that tells me that there's some kind of connection to the Star Nation in their own way. So
we have a pyramid here in Wisconsin that we know of. It's underneath a lake, and it's been found. There's pictures of it. It's been known around here for a long time. It's just a couple hours east of me, and there's a lake with a pyramid in the bottom. Rougher than don't think of the pyramids of Giza. It was like a stacked stone pyramid, but it's there, and you don't hear much about it. I don't know if it gets shut down or not much to it or whatever. But they also found standing stones at the bottom of the lake, so it's interesting.
It's in Ohio, and Neil doesn't know this, but in Ohio, south of Cleveland, there are these snake mounds that were resurrected. I've never been there. I want to be there, but I want to see that.
Not far. That's about 20 minutes from my dad's house.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Of Cincinnati. So.
It's yes, outside of Cincinnati, and it's amazing because all these resurrections of mounds, pyramids, and things like that make us think. Because even the Indians, the Native Americans, can't claim that. They just don't know. So that tells me that it's something otherworldly, and we are a polytheistic society, Oyate people. Like the Greeks, many godded. We didn't have a monotheistic, one God, Jesus, Christ, whatever. We didn't have that. And I grew up Catholic. So that says something about our humanity.
It's
Scottish or Native American.
If you study anthropology, in fact, Ruben, I know something about the mounds of North America. The mounds and the are usually built over, alarmingly, by places like prisons. They tend to build over the mounds because the Native Americans of North America specifically did not build in pyramidal structures. They did not rise above the ground. They actually They shaped the earth. They shaped the earth into very usually snake-like, what we would perceive as snake-like structures. But because these did not rise above the ground, they were usually built over. And it's only through in recent years that a lot of scientists have been able to map the grounds of many states throughout North America to discover these mounds. The same mounds appear in Ireland and they appear in Britain. They're not risen above the ground. They're kind of structured. In Ireland, we have Newbridge, which is like
Yes.
tombs and structures that are
I would love to visit.
centered around the earth, and it's one tragedy that the Native American peoples of the United States built what they felt they could build at that time, which were just mounds, but they were completely, when the settlers came in, they were just built over. But what's interesting is that somebody knew these mounds were precious in some respects, because they were usually built over by very dark prisons. I mentioned prisons earlier on. They tend to build over the mounds with prisons. Now, this is a very strange connection to the mounds of North America. And it's something, there's an author called Peter Levenda who studied the occult, and he is an expert on this, and he's a friend of mine. I sold him a couple of paintings, so I got in there, and I happened to read all his books and speak to him in detail about this. But the North American continent has an occult connection with the snake-like mounds, which were noticed and taken over by certain, what you would loosely term, occult groups in North America. So I think that's maybe that's, I don't feel it's separate from this conversation about abduction, but it's certainly an interesting insight. So Ruben, take that away. What do you think of it?
Neil, I think you're right in saying that according to our archetype is that we spawn from one source, and then we became Black, Chinese, Native American, Irish, Scott, whatever. But you're right in saying that we are all one people, and in that way, in our stories, creation story, flood story, all come back to the same source, whether we want to be Scottish, Irish,
Skyrish,
Lakota, or whatever. Yeah, Skyrish. Whatever it is, we just choose to be that because that's our humanity, but also in the same sense that, as Joseph Campbell said, that it's our mythos, it's our mythology, it's our legends, it's our lore, it's our story that brings us all back together, and we have the same meaning. This is my mother, the moon, waning and full moon, and then the waning moon, and then the star of the five spirits. Spirit is first and foremost. Then we have wind, water, air, and then I forget the next one, and then the sun. And this is a sun symbol from an old ancient buffalo robe that that's not Lakota, but it's Plains orientated, which I am.
Sure.
And so we have all these things coming together, and Lakotas don't have clan systems. We have societies which you have to graduate into. But Scots and Irish have clan systems, but so many other Native Americans. Now, how can that be possible? Because we're not even related. We're on the other side of the pond, yet we still have this type of system that
because
we do.
we share a common experience.
We have little people, and you have little people.
Yeah.
We have you have elementals, or we call them elementals, but you have fairy folk. And Scotty and I talked about this, and you and I, Neil, have talked about this. When I tell my children, when you see those little lightning bugs here in America in June, they are fairies. I tell my children that they're fairies, but when you get close to them, Daddy, that's just a bug. And I said, that's why they turn into bugs for your benefit, but they are fairies, elementals. And when you see in Lakota way, when you look out in the woods, you don't have many woods out in the prairie, but when you see something move like a branch, it's a walking stick. I don't know if you have that, Neil, in your country, but a walking stick.
We have very similar themes. What we call the she in this country, or the
what connection do you think the she, the elementals, the fae have with the possibility of abduction? Yeah, I mean, alien abduction and aliens.
Exactly.
The stories of the fae.
Yeah, that is a very good question, Scotty. And from what I have studied, there's two slightly separate things going on here. The abduction scenario, I believe, to be just that. It's an abduction experience by a species outside of this solar system who have a definite agenda to hybridize the human race, or to acquire our planet for their own nefarious purposes. And I've read enough to throughout history and anthropology, you can see this repeating over and over. Unfortunately, it spills over into religion, which is always a difficult thing to discuss with people who are very religious, because. But if you read the scriptures, the what you read earlier on about Matthew, all of these things tend to end up the same way. The idea of the aspect of rapture and being taken up, and also in the shamanistic traditions, this aspect of initiation, and the Greys have a very the facial structure has a very similar structure to tribal masks that are used in initiation cultures throughout the world. So I think I've always taken the approach of Occam's razor when it comes to all of these things. But I do feel that there's I have to be careful here, because
don't be careful.
I can't say that I don't believe in God, but I do believe that there is definitely an influence that has tried to explain itself in various ways as star seeds and star people, and the mystic Jesus was just that, a mystic, and it's interesting to note that he never explained anything about heaven nor hell. That was actually put in later transcriptions of the Bible, so the Catholic Church would have dominion over the population. That's what I personally believe. So, having read all of these kind of things, my belief about abduction is yes. We were visited and seeded, and we are being abducted, and for genetic reasons, for DNA, as hybridization is. I mean, this is a process that could last thousands of years.
Sure.
On the other hand, I also believe, that there is what Jung referred to as the other, which is the shadow world, which is what all of us might refer to as the demonic realm. That is separate from the abduction experience. This is kind of a dimension-based influence, and is very real, and that's where all forms of ritual magic and occultism spring from, which can't be explained but can be studied in detail and is very real. and I have personal experience of that. So there are there's a definite demonic realm, and there's a definite abduction experience.
Yes.
I believe they're completely separate. So, what else can I say? I better shut up now because I probably offended.
No, that's okay.
Half
I
the
want to
population.
respond to that, but when you're
Yeah.
done, I want to respond to that, Scotty.
No. I'm far away. Fine.
I'm going to say what I was that close to being a Catholic priest, a Jesuit, a soldier priest, a Jesuit priest. And I still wear the black robes when I practice magic. Anyway, magique, not magic, like card tricks and whatnot.
Yes,
but
Yeah, with a K, yeah.
With the K. And so I'd like to say this, that in addition to what you're saying, and capitalize on it, that the kingdom of God is within you, all of us, as well as the kingdom of hell is within you. And so we are our own gods in many ways. That's why I love Hinduism, because they say the God in me, namaste, recognizes the God in you. And we are our own manifestations, as they say in Christianity, images of God, or goddess. And I traded in, as Joseph Campbell says, the best thing you could do is trade your God in for another God. And I've traded my God in for a goddess. So when I pray, I look at it as a female form. Why? My culture is matrilineal, matriarchal. And my mother raised me, my grandmother raised me, my auntie raised me, and I spoke Lakota in a woman's way. And then I had to be turned at the edge of pubescence to speak the man's way or speak the woman's way. And my uncles and my grandfather and my father taught me how to do that. I totally get you, Neil, in the sense of it's up to us that decides what is and what isn't, as far as our deities. And we are a polytheistic people. Like the Greeks, we have many gods. We're not monotheistic. It's not just Jesus alone, which was a great prophet and teacher. But I get it.
As I said, he was a mystic, and he did exist, and he did walk on this earth. And I can't say for sure whether he was divinely placed. But I think he was someone who was exceptionally talented, gifted in being able to decipher what was going on around him.
I will say this. I say this to my audiences at colleges when I speak here in New York and Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I say, show me a piece of the cross, a piece of the wood, or the ark. And that's 2,000 years old. Yet in South Dakota, us Lakota people have our pipe made from a buffalo calf bone, 2,000 years old. In Greengrass, South Dakota, by the 14th generational pipe keeper, which is made from a buffalo calf bone, not pipestone or wood that we smoke from. And we bring it out every winter solstice and every summer solstice, according to our 13 calendars. America has 12 months. We have 13. We still adhere to that, as most paganistic religions. And pagan is a Roman word for country dweller. It's a Roman word. Pagan.
That's it. It's just about country. It's kind of like a country dweller, or somebody who
like redneck,
kind of scrabbles around in the dirt. It's a degenerative term, pagan. Now we associate it with Wicca and witches and wandering around in the woods in long robes, and you're getting
heathen
with nature.
Of the heath, Scottish heathen.
Yeah, But getting back to what Scotty was referring to, the fairy lore and all of these gnomes, elves, sprites, fairies, demons, angels, UFOs, all of these things.
Sasquatch, Bigfoot.
Yeah, all of these things, I think, have the same source. A lot of people refer to that as Gaia, or reflection of the planet, somehow reflecting humanity's fears. And it's ironic that abduction ties directly into the monotheistic religions, in that you're being taken up into the sky, by this shining alchemical brilliant object, the four-gated sides of Jerusalem, taken up in the rapture, by the selected few. It's very obvious when you actually think about abduction and monotheistic religions. But I think they're not mutually exclusive. I think they're completely interrelated, in that I do believe that there is something going on here, and that is a definitive abduction phenomena, and has been going on for centuries and thousands of years. And people have tried to explain it in oral tradition throughout the centuries, but it always comes back to the same idea of being taken up to the stars for some reason, which we can't understand. And then that's the abduction experience. The idea, is there an overreaching God in control of all of this? It's hard to believe so for me. It's hard to believe so with all the evidence, anthropological evidence, supporting the aspect that all around the world, through all the structures that are built, through all the belief systems, through the oral traditions and the writings, that it's hard to believe that there is a kind of overarching theme that is kind of mystical or divinative. It's kind of, to me, it makes more sense that we were visited a long time ago by spacefaring beings, for want of a better word, who were very interested in our DNA and very interested in the acquisition of this planet for various reasons. Yeah, but they arrived at a time. I believe these people built all the main structures on the Geyser complex. Number one. You can't explain the Geyser complex. You mentioned earlier on how these blocks are put together. You can't even fit a playing card between them. You can't do that these days. You ask any builder, can you do this? And they said no. Without concrete and cement, and it's impossible. So that is not these are I think we I'll end on this, but I think we have been visited various times over the centuries and over thousands of years, with one object in mind, to acquire this planet and hybridize the population. I think Hollywood knows a lot about this, because they've shown us many times over and through various movies.
Or Hollywood, I think, just gets used to. We used to wonder, with all the shows and movies that were about this kind of topic, if they were trying to ease us into disclosure, type of a thing. And so I wonder if Hollywood doesn't really know jack shit when it comes to it, but they have all these stories that are pushed on them that they will then push on the public and make into movies. They're perhaps unwitting participants in spreading this. Is there somebody behind the proliferation of these kinds of movies and these kinds of thematic topics?
I think that would make sense.
Yeah.
I will say this: Steven Spielberg, I think in the early '80s, created Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
And
out of mashed potatoes.
I've done many tours there and talked about this, and capitalizing on Neil and Scotty's references to that Hollywood, as well as the Star People. We call them the Star Nation. Wichachbi Oyate, the Star Nation people. That the legend is among Native American people. Our legend of the land says we didn't call it Devil's Tower because that's a Christian influence. Everything that was Native American, not Christian, was devil. Devil's Lake, Devil's Spirit, Devil's Mountain, Devil's Tower, yada, 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 yada. Anyway, so we call it Hechota Baha, Greyhorn Butte. And the legend is told that 7 girls were picking berries, and a great bear came towards them, and he had a tail. Bears don't have tails, but he had a tail, and later on was tricked by the trickster to cut his tail off. Long story short, they ran to a stump of a tree and prayed, and the tree rose, the stump rose, and the bear clawed at it. So you see Devil's Tower, Greyhorn Butte, with these claw marks, and there's a picture of this bear trying to get at those girls, and they became the 7 Pleiades. And when you look exactly above that Devil's Tower in Wyoming, the 7 Pleiades are there. And I like to think that that was something that the Star Nation people, whatever it may be, aliens or those abducted, put those girls into the sky and mark that place. And the bear went on to Sturgis, South Dakota, which is the largest motorcycle rally, to Bear Butte. And when you go to Bear Butte, where we do our ceremonies, our sundances, our not sundances, but our vision quests, it looks like a bear laying down. It's a huge mountain. And so there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, Neil.
It's not. It's just my truth. I'm just putting it out there, trying to look at this.
I believe
actually, quite logically, and I think that there is a kind of a conflict within myself. I'll be honest with both of you, in that people might be listening to this and say that this guy is Satanist, or
people will always think that.
But the truth is, I am quite spiritual, and but I'm also quite logical as well. And if it doesn't make sense, how can I make something that doesn't make sense? I think in my mind, there's 2 aspects going on. Jung realized this, that there's the shadow world, and there is what we would term reality. So I think a lot of the abduction experiences that we're discussing tonight can be explained logically if you actually study anthropology and the consistency that these stories are handed down. But there's also
we have
an influence.
Matthew Sainsbury, by the way, sitting in the wings here. Let's bring him in.
Yeah, Matthew.
I don't know how long you've been sitting there, Matthew, but I just noticed you.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I'm very glad that Ruben Fast Horse had talked about the story of the famous Mount Devil's Den. It's quite interesting because that gives you an explanation of why the mountain has that claws with bear and the bear trying to get to those girls, and you can still see like like long marks, like scratches, and against the size of the mountain. It's quite interesting that he touched on that. But I'll say too, that I'm glad that he touched on in South America, and so because I think there's a guy called Robert Odin. He's a ufologist, but he passed. But he showed Indian and Inca civilization, I think it was, where they actually made like sculptures of people wearing space suits, and you can actually look and see the boots, and maybe look at the size of the legs. It looks like what you see with the modern astronaut, and that is more than 1,000 years old. So they've definitely been carving something that they were seeing that they would see it in their time as something abnormal or something from another world. Definitely so. Yeah.
I love that, Matt, because I'm going to just expand on that, and Neil and Scotty, that Jung, I love Jung. He said myths and lore, legends bring our consciousness to a level that is spiritual.
Yes.
That's why we have them. That's why we talk about them. And we're not I'm Native American and South American or Irish or Scottish. It doesn't matter. We all come to that understanding where we are not that different. Yeah, we look different, but we're not that different.
Yeah, there's a common thread through all mankind's stories, and so I can find that there as well. Because when I was, I always thought that when I was small, that the Bible was the only book that contains a flood story. But as I do reading and research, I realized that as in Native American stuff, we have a flood story. In Greek mythology, even in Sumeria and Babylonia, you have the Epic of Gilgamesh and the guy building a boat called Utnapishtim and all this stuff. Yeah, it's quite interesting stuff, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I posted it. Go ahead, now.
Sorry.
No, what you have to
just
say is
saying
more
that,
important than what I had to say there.
No. I also think that the whole idea of the trickster and the shapeshifter is very profound. But I personally believe, and before Matt came on, I think I was saying that there is definitely two parties involved here. I do believe that there is an influence on mankind dimensionally that is completely separate from what we might term the abduction scenario. All right. For example, there is more evidence for the existence of demonic realms and demonic influence. If you look at Catholicism, you can qualify this, Scotty and Ruben. There's more evidence for demonic possession that cannot be explained than there is for the existence of God, and that is a fact. People don't like to talk about that, but there's very, very, it can't be denied.
There too.
But
what was that, Matthew?
No, I was saying it was responding to what Neil was saying, that there is dark energies out there. Everything is not always positive.
Yes. I believe that is separate from what we're discussing tonight. It's just an influence because it correlates to a lot of different things that happen throughout the world. Missing people, people disappearing in extremely bizarre circumstances. A lot of very strange things, but that's separate. And the mythologies are there for a reason, and they're also influenced by what Jung referred to as the shadow or the other side. They're influenced by the. In other words, this is we're talking about things here that can't be caught in the rational net. It can't be caught by science. It can't be weighed and measured. UFOs, a projection of the planet, a projection of our fears, or are they actual aliens abducting us? It's hard to know. I think it's the answer is always somewhere in the middle. You know, I think there were people, entities that visited us, and
Hey, Rudy, by the way, in the chat.
are still visiting us. I think it makes sense that people like Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs and others, John Mack, through the hypnotism, you know, with these consistent reports of being genetic material being taken, I think it makes sense logically that we are being hybridized on this planet. I also think it makes sense that there's a very dark and nefarious and malevolent other. So it's a complex area, but you know, it's just my thoughts.
But getting back to Whitley Strieber for a second, because you mentioned Bud Hopkins, I know he and Bud Hopkins were very close.
Yeah.
And Bud Hopkins originally hypnotized Whitley Strieber and used hypnosis therapy, I guess is a better way to say that. And I just caught a piece. I thought it was a new documentary, but it was out a few years ago with Whitley Strieber in it. And his wife had not passed away yet. And I think Bud Hopkins had not passed away yet. So it might be a handful of years old. But it was on his experiences and the things he wrote about. And I know Bud Hopkins held Whitley Strieber in pretty high regard as far as credibility and what he was experiencing and all of that. So I think that's worth taking into account. When I mentioned Whitley Strieber, we all kind of were like, well, maybe he's a little more of a story writer, but I know Bud Hopkins held him in pretty high regard. That's worth looking up. There is I don't know if it's called, if his name is in the title, but there's a documentary about Whitley Strieber from recent years. It's worth watching.
I follow his podcasts.
Oh, yes.
You know, he's extremely active.
He is
with his podcasts. When I listen to Whitley, he sounds a little bit flaky these days. Maybe
he does sometimes.
Maybe it's because he's getting older.
Well, admittedly, you know. Hey, wait a minute.
You know, I'm going to say this. In hypnotism, because I was studying to become a hypnotist by the second most college hypnotist in the country of America, and he wanted to teach me hypnotism. And basically, he said to me, hypnotism, to be hypnotized is by choice, just like we're doing. Like Neil is saying about demonology. I did a house blessing demon and whatnot. A house blessing inside the house. There was a demon inside, and the Jesuit priest and I called me on. I was 18, a student, and he took me around, put salt around the house, and then we saged, using sage all across the house, opened all the doors, and we asked the woman in charge, the house owner, to ask it to leave. So that was very, that was interesting. But hypnotism is a choice in the sense of, I'll give you an example. We're driving down the highway, Neil and I and Scotty and Matthew, we're driving, and I'm lost in thought, but I still know how to get off the exit because I know where we're going. But I'm not acknowledging it. I'm just knowing that I have to get off here. Yes. Maybe by visual recognition or something like that. But we're kind of cognitive to the sense of where we're going, what we're going to do. And that's hypnotism. So when the hypnotist comes to you and asks you, Neil, do you want a piece of cake? And then he likes his favorite cake. So yes, I do. But he's not thinking about the cake. He's thinking about what he's doing, whatever he's doing.
Thinking about the cake.
Yeah, he's writing. He's writing something, and that's
absolutely hypnotists are only credible through hypnotists are only credible through a consistent accumulation of data from completely separate people who have not met, and they tell the same, basically the same story, you know. And, you know, we as humans, we have a major disadvantage in that we don't understand mind, you know. We live with mind every aspect of our days, with thoughts, you know. Science will tell, you know, the brain function, they have no idea what produces thoughts or desire or, you know, what Ruben just described about inexplicable moments of clarity and inspiration or creativity. That is all to do with mind and consciousness. Science cannot explain that. If you're of, you know, many religious people would say it's God-given, you know. Yeah, great. Yeah, but that doesn't really help us, and it doesn't help us because the mind that we're given has led us into nothing but self-destruction. A combination of altruism and selflessness and extreme self-destruction. So it's like a schizophrenic understanding that we have of the mind. We have no idea what mind is. You know, we have no idea, and it drives us crazy. It makes us ill. It makes us depressed and suicidal. It makes us, unless we have something to reach out for, where we feel we have no place in the world. You know,
and, you know, just to jump on that springboard off that, Neil, but Native Americans, Lakota, my people, have no concept of hell, have no concept of the devil. That's Christian orientated, that's Christian made, but we have a trickster. And I know the Irish and the Scottish have a trickster, and the trickster gets tricked by itself, by its own works. But there's no devil in the world. That's Christian made. Why? For control. For control. And that's what we believe.
Well, it's interesting that even the Jews, the Hebrews, did not have a Satan. They did, in the sense that we think of him as the devil. They had Satan was a title that you found in early in the book of Job, which is one of the earliest chronological books in the Bible. They talked about the Satan with the article in front of his name. The Satan. I'm sorry, what was that, Matthew?
Hasatan. That's how we pronounce it in Hebrew. Hasatan.
They had the article in front calling him the Satan. It was a title. He was the deceiver, the one, the accuser, at that particular juncture in that particular story that looked an awful lot like something that would have happened with the Olympian gods, playing with the lives of a man. The gods playing, I'll bet you he'll curse you if you take away all his stuff. Okay, he didn't curse you there. I'll bet you he'll curse you if you take away his kids, if you take away his health. And of course, you know, and then we know the story of the book. But Satan was not a concept as far as the devil in ancient Hebrew theology, or Israelite theology, if you will. You look at even the book of Genesis with the Garden of Eden story where they had Nakash. He was not called Satan. He was not called Lucifer. He was not called the devil. That was something that didn't appear for almost 1,000 years in some of the other books written in the Bible.
You see, wanted to mention too that there is a religion that in ancient Persia, Ruben may have heard of it, called Zoroastrianism. They have a duality of good versus darkness. So Ahura Mazda, the god of light, and Ahriman or Ergamanu, the god of darkness. And that religion existed after the Babylonian captivity, and the Jews would have been probably influenced by some of that, because there's theories that the concept of light and darkness, they would have probably absorbed some of that too as well after their experiences after the Babylonian exile, because they had to they had a question among themselves as to why this happened to us, as a people, that Babylon was allowed to come in and destroy us and take us captive away like that. So these concepts, of trying to understand these mysteries may have emerged during that period. The Babylon exile following that. Because
Sure, a lot of
terrorists
merging
occurred.
Absolutely,
of
Matthew,
stories
yeah.
and
Agreed.
theologies.
Yeah.
Well, what was the Septuagint? That was after the Babylonian captivity. You had all these rabbis that went
Yeah.
to Alexandria, and
Right.
they got permission from the Pharaoh, Ptolemy II, to dig into and camp out at the Library of Alexandria, to dig
Yeah.
out the old scriptures and reconstruct the ancient Hebrew scriptures. Well, why did they do that? Really for two reasons. It was to bolster the faithful, and it was to rewrite or re-record the history of Israel. And so they went to the Library of Alexandria. And what we have in our Old Testament today was the product of that. The Septuagint is basically translated into English. You've got the English Old Testament.
Right.
So that's what they did to rebuild the faith after the Babylonian captivity. And I think they didn't remember a lot of things. They had oral traditions, but they didn't remember a lot. And they had to go back and check the old documents. And man, lucky a place like the Library of Alexandria existed, huh?
Mecca knowledge.
What a
Yeah.
fabulous place that must have been. But
yeah.
Also, I wanted to say, this is the unimportant thing I was going to say. I'm going to post a link here. We were talking about the serpent mounds. If you look in the chat room, that's a little video I did when I was at the serpent mounds. It's nothing like detailed information. I don't even remember what I said. I'm walking around the serpent mounds with my camera and filming and talking. Who knows? I could have been talking about my daughter's wedding that happened a week before that, or I could have been talking about the mounds. I don't know what I was talking about. But you can go to that link and see some video of the serpent mounds.
Serpent Mount.
So there you go.
No, it's a fascinating area. Yeah,
It is.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I would recommend anybody look at that, because it's as I
I
said
listened
earlier.
what you mentioned about the hypnosis thing, because Betty and Barney Hill, they seem to have had some genuine experience, because they had some form of missing time after their UFO encounter in 1961.
Yes.
And they went under hypnosis, but they were able to vividly describe what the memory that they had missed. Yeah. And on that, but Betty had drawn a star map of what one of the beings had shown her on the craft of where
That's
they were
true.
from.
That's true.
Yeah, called Zeta Reticula 1, Zeta Reticula 2, where these beings were from. And those stars were not known until 1969. So it seems to me that they did have a genuine experience there in that road coming down from New Hampshire down there like that, because they were an interracial couple. And for them to be married down south would have been very nasty, because
It would have been quite hard
Yeah,
for Betty and Barney Hill. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. So I mean, when it comes to the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, I do believe that's completely genuine. You know, they were abducted.
And if you've ever heard the recordings of them under hypnosis, you listen to Whitley Strieber's early recordings, and something in this documentary about him that he said he hadn't listened to since it had happened. And he was really taken aback at his own reactions under hypnosis, and the screaming and the crying. And you saw some of that with Betty and Barney Hill.
James Earl Jones does it well too in a movie about that story. James Earl Jones with his deep voice. He does it well. He plays his Barney Hill. Yeah.
Right.
No, absolutely, Matthew. Yeah, I agree with you. And just one other thing I'd like to say, if I may, Scotty,
please,
is that I think ufology is really struggling at the moment, and it's kind of interesting. It kind of amuses me, like all the serious ufologists at the moment are really confused, and they're fighting amongst themselves like never before. And the reason is that the Pentagon released a Tic Tac video, and they said, they said more or less, that there's things flying around in the sky, and we don't know what they are. So Sorry. Yeah, they exist,
Yep.
but we
Yep.
we don't know what they are.
They seem to be
And all of a
sounding
sudden, all the ufologists were like, "What? Is that disclosure?" Well, kind of. Well, they just told you they exist, but they don't know what they are, and they're like, "What do we do now?"
Yeah,
And
they're
the
sending
funny
me
thing
a
is,
lot.
if you actually
They're
follow
censoring.
ufology, they're completely and utterly out to sea about this because they don't know where to go next. It's like,
Yeah.
have you been lying to us all these years?
Yes.
That's what they expect. But it was, I actually think it was a brilliant move by the Pentagon to actually say, yeah, they're here, they're flying around, but we don't know what they are.
Yeah. Now go away. Leave us alone.
Now leave us alone.
You're right, Neil, in saying that, because the human mind, for the common man, can't acknowledge that. They're on the surface of just, do I have a cell phone? Do I have enough money in my account? What's my dinner tonight? They're safe. They're safe in that realm. But
security.
For them to think scientifically beyond the scope of what they normally have every day, they can't comprehend. And it's guys like us, Matt, Neil, Scotty, that are testing and pushing and probing to get people to awaken to their consciousness and say, hey, it's not just, we're not just here. There's other people here. There's other things here. There's nature. There's things under the sea, ocean that we never discovered. Places.
There are many influences.
That I'm in New York, and I'm from North Dakota, South Dakota, and I've never been to the bottom of the Laurentian Sea. I've never been to Mount Everest, but I see programs that teach me that there are places and the people that do that, and going to Mars or going to the moon or whatever. And that helps me to comprehend, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not just here by myself. I'm not just a lonely Indian,
Absolutely.
I got to tell you, I have no desire to go to any of those places in outer space unless I could do it fast. I want a starship. You put me on a starship.
William Shatner.
We'll be there in 3 days, not 30 years. Then I'll go. That'll be fun to visit. Yeah. And so
I guess what I'm saying, Scotty, is it's our comprehension.
Yes.
It's our comprehension of our reality. And I'm safe here. I'm good. I like what I do. I get up in the morning and, have a drink at night and go to bed.
So, Hoiwechi, whatever that word was for get away. Go away, I'm fine.
But it's just, my main concern is like, what am I going to have for supper? Is it going to be Indian food or meatballs and pasta, or is it going to be pizza?
Right.
Have a drink and then just.
Well, that's what I say. We all get, we're so caught up. I don't want to give it a negative connotation because life is worth living and you live your life every day. So we all get caught up in the day to day, but not always giving all or very a small fraction of people the time to even think about anything beyond the daily grind. And so we get busy with the things of life and we don't think any deeper than that. And
well, most people don't. But,
most people don't.
I think
that's how I meant. Most people don't.
I think it's your spirit. I would class myself as a spiritual person. Now, I don't like to be put into a box. What do you believe exactly? There are forces at work which are extremely powerful.
Beyond us.
As you know, I'm an artist. And, I very rarely talk about my art because I kind of tend to dwell on, my artwork dwells on things that cannot be seen. So I often, if ever I'm interviewed I am occasionally interviewed now and again by, bands like me and
Yes.
stuff like that. And they always ask what the inspiration is. I says the inspiration is a dark room. I draw what I can't see. I'm like,
Sure.
It's like if you walk into a dark room, I will draw and paint what's in that dark room before you put the light switch on.
There you go.
Once you put the light switch on, I've nothing else to paint. So
I just want to say quickly, good night, Amanda. Yar, have a good time at sea. We're almost done here, so
yeah,
won't miss
fascinating
much.
conversation, and
Well,
we-
Neil, it's art. It's whether it's art, drawing, or painting. It's music. It's song. It's dance. It's ritual.
Yeah.
That makes it all art. And when you see my hand with all the fingers, you bring it together. That's art. And it becomes powerful. It becomes powerful. And at that point, it becomes spiritual. You're connecting to the spiritual realm, what we call as Native Americans a vision quest.
and that is
Or
the
dream.
essence. That is the essence.
Had one.
Yeah. I let you guys go now, but I will.
Well, we've got to go. I'm going to say good night, Matthew. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, I just want to say, for me, true spirituality is believing and not believing at the same time. If you believe in nothing and believe in everything, well, then you believe in something, and it's that something that I believe in. That might, for a lot of people, that makes no sense, and it's a contradiction in terms.
Sense. I get it.
But spirituality is believing in my own unbelief. So if I believe that I'm failing, if I believe that I can do better, well, that might give me an inspiration to do better in some way.
I want to say one thing, and then how much time I got, Scotty?
We're overtime. So
yeah, we gotta go. We gotta go. Scotty has to go to bed.
This is capitalize on Neil's thing where you said it's nothing and everything. Ea is the first god deity of our creator in Lakota, the rock, and he broke himself open, and his water was his blood was water, blue, and then he became pebbles, stone, and the other part became the earth. And a voice was heard saying, so it's a Trinity deity that said exactly what you said. I am everything and I am nothing.
what was his name? You said Ea?
Ea, Inyan, the rock.
Okay.
And Mack is the earth.
Enki in the Sumerian culture was also known as Ea. And Ea is the base word for Yahweh, which is the Hebrew word for Jehovah.
That's right.
I will leave you with just about 6 words. All I would say is I know nothing about everything.
And I will leave you with a few more words.
I know everything about nothing.
I'll leave you with these words. The more shit I know I don't know shit. So there you go.
Okay, let you go, guys. Great conversation. Thank you. Take care.
Good conversation.
Always brilliant. Always brilliant.
Always. Good to have you here, brother. Misu.
Yeah, I love you.
Good night.
Well.
And I'll talk to you soon. All right, folks, that's it for tonight. That's all we got. We're moving on. And we'll see you again tomorrow, where we'll probably pick up a variation on this topic so we can get through some of the other stuff. Thank you for being here. Thanks for joining me. All of you who were listening on the radio show, thanks for being here for radio. And those are the rest of you who've been here. Thanks for being here, hanging out for the captain's cabin. That's what we do. All right. And so that's it. That's all I got. Live long and prosper.